As we bring in our guest, Professor Stephan Haggard. He is the director of the Korea Pacific Studies at the University of California at San Diego, and he joins us via Skype. Stephan, thanks for coming back and talking about DPRK, a major conflict possible with DPRK. The words of U.S. President Donald Trump, but he hopes diplomacy prevails. We've certainly known about the escalation of tensions. The fact that he has now uttered those words, does it really change anything, in your opinion?
Well, actually, quite fundamentally, and I have to say I disagree a little bit with your lead on this. The real thing that's come out of the last 24 hours are these quite astounding comments by Secretary Tillerson that the United States is willing to sit down and have negotiations with North Korea. We've said this before in a sort of indirect way, but I think that this is a really large move towards Wang Yi's dual-track proposal. Now, Secretary Tillerson did say that he wasn't interested in a freeze, but he couched that with some reservations. He could be interested in a freeze, for example, if North Korea showed an interest in discussing denuclearization. So the sanctions bit is not the only story out of UN Security Council this morning.
Well, let me tell you what else Tillerson said today at the special meeting of the UN Security Council. He said all options are on the table. Business as usual, not an option. He also said failing to act now would have catastrophic consequences. Are we getting mixed messages again from this administration?
Well, I think both China and the United States are pursuing what might be called dual-track strategies. So China has said we are willing to move back towards negotiations, but the United States also has to yield and be willing to come back to the table. And the United States is, in a sense, saying the same thing. We're willing to move back towards negotiations, but patience is not unlimited. We can't allow the nuclear and missile programs to continue to develop at the pace they are. But I'm a little bit more hopeful than I've been at some time that China and the United States, and with South Korea coming on board following the elections, we might be in a position where there's a more unified posture with respect to North Korea than in a while.
Stephan, it's Owen Fairclough here in the studio with Asieh. We talked potentially about squeezing the DPRK with oil imports, potentially intercepting ships. We hear and see sanction after sanction against this country. At that point, are we reaching the end of what the UN can potentially do to the DPRK in terms of sanctions? Are we towards the end of the line?
I don't think this really is an issue at this juncture about UN Security Council sanctions unless the North Koreans actually test, because the UN Security Council wouldn't be convened around a concrete sanctions resolution unless there was a test. And notice that there haven't been tests, which suggests that Chinese diplomacy may be working. So I think that the other thing that Tillerson said that's very important is that the United States, he says openly now, is not interested in regime change. We're not interested in bringing Kim Jong-un to his knees, as Tillerson put it. We're interested in bringing him to his senses. And the fact that there haven't been major missile tests and nuclear tests in these last two holidays, as was suggested, I think is again a positive sign. I suspect that Beijing is in fact doing what it said it would do, what President Xi said he would do, which was to do the diplomatic work to try to get North Korea to turn around.
All right, we'll leave it there. Stephan Haggard, thank you so much. We should add China. Tillerson also said they've had very productive exchanges on the issue of DPRK with Beijing. We will see what's going to happen at the UN Security